Well, it kind of sucks outside right now. It's really cold, it's windy, and I still got to get out here and start working with some of this equipment, this gear, and figure out what works and what doesn't for me. And the reason behind that is because there's three major events that are very possible here in the near future that you should be prepping for, especially regarding the sense of being a capable Minuteman of sorts, or a prepared citizen, or whatever we want to refer it to as now in this current nomenclature. But there are these three events that have me concerned that I wanted to share with you so you had some ideas as to why being defensively capable might be very prudent at this point in time. Now, as my face begins to freeze, I do want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. Thanks to them, I can get out here, test out gear and equipment, and try new things. So big thanks to Midway USA because they have pretty much whatever you might need to get better prepared in many aspects, especially regarding the Minuteman / prepared citizen concept. Now, what are the three events that I am currently preparing for regarding the possible use of defensive gear and equipment? The first one, okay, and these are going to go linearly, and they all could happen simultaneously. So that's something for you to be aware of. And of course, if you like the word simultaneous, then hit the subscribe button down below because it's a word that I decided to choose right now. So, first off, we have extreme escalation regarding a World War III type scenario. Now, I don't personally think this will evolve into foreign invasion or foreign troops on the ground here in the US or anything along those lines. But they do have assets here in our country already. And those assets could be from all different spectrums, whether or not they're organized gangs working with the cartels or some of these other entities that we know exist and are extremely violent and well-funded and have lots of militaristic equipment, or if we're just talking about, let's just say, covert assets that might be trying to initiate infrastructure sabotage and things of that nature. Regardless of what that might look like, there are people here in our country who are well-armed, well-equipped, and well-trained that are willing to hurt Americans in order to accomplish their goals. And honestly, our biggest threat regarding that is the criminal organizations, especially those revolving around these cartels and these gangs that have intertwined business structures between China and Russia and all of our foreign adversaries, including Iran. So, this World War III situation is getting really dicey, especially with the use of all these long-range missiles and everything else that's being green-lighted by the current administration and the UK and France and all the other NATO countries. I'm concerned about it. I think you should be as well. It's not a good look for anybody, regardless of who's at fault or what justifications there are. Moving forward in a war that is global is going to have some very bad consequences. So, that's the first thing that I'm preparing for in the sense of why you might need stuff like this AR you see right here, or this body armor, or whatever else it is you find necessary for personal defense. Now, the second event that is concerning, but also more domestic, let's just say, is the possibility of civil unrest during this tumultuous election period that hasn't quite finished yet, thanks to the fact that we're not done until January 20th. And if the current administration, as well as those who hold power in Washington, decide to not certify the results of this election that we currently, or just recently had, then the outcry or the possible negative repercussions of not certifying this election could create some extreme instability here in the US. The conditions for what may be considered by some to be a civil war of sorts would definitely exist. And we also know that unrest is just part of the playbook. They're more than willing to get out, loot, burn, riot, and everything else. And this could affect both sides of the aisle, regardless of political affiliation. So, right now, with the way that things have been going, especially regarding this sudden escalation in support for the war effort and allowing for the use of weapons that were obviously going to provoke Russia to up the ante, I do have questions about what their plans are come January. And that could be another very tumultuous time for those of us here in the US. And there are enemies, foreign and domestic, who might capitalize on that very difficult time come January. So that is the second event that I'm preparing for. Now, like I said in the introduction of this video, all these events could compound or happen simultaneously on top of each other. So be aware of that, because that would create the perfect storm of chaos, which is what our adversaries would likely want to see. Whew, it is cold. By the way, I'm in North Dakota. It's not the same here. It's just not the same here. I don't know how else to say it. It's not the same. So, the third event, the third one that I am preparing for in regards to why stuff like this might become more of a necessity than what a lot of us like to hope or assume. Because in all honesty, if I had it my way, I would never ever need to use this for anything other than enjoying myself on the range. That's my goal in life, and I think that should be everyone's goal in life. But we also have to be realistic about the fact that people are inherently dangerous, and there's a lot of them. So the third event that I think you should definitely be considering, and this kind of ties in with some of the previous things we just talked about. If the certification and everything else goes through, or whatever happens during that process to where we do find this new administration back in the White House, one of their goals starting day one is mass deportations of illegal immigrants. And the thing about that is that they're also talking about militarily targeting the drug cartels, who are also part of the human smuggling operations that are allowing for this mass illegal immigration to exist. So, when you disrupt the cartel's business strategy, you create enemies. And these enemies have no morals when it comes to how they'll react to you disturbing their business strategies. And this is something you should definitely be considering right now. Because if we start seeing some direct conflict between the US military and the cartels, and the shutdown of immigration to the degree that it hurts their smuggling business and their trafficking business and everything else, and they start losing money, they will react viscerally and violently. We've seen this before in Mexico. I believe it was around 2006 when Calderon, the president at the time, decided to crack down on the drug cartels. The harder he cracked down on them, the more violent they became. And their homicide rate went through the roof. And the cartels not only became more violent against the people and the law enforcement and military as well, but they also became more violent against each other, having more turf wars and trying to take over territory in order to stabilize their business and create additional income streams. And that's a real threat, because we've been told that's what they're going to do. They're going to go after the cartels. They're going to go after the human smuggling, the trafficking, and they're going to go after the border itself in the sense of securing it, which will disrupt their business. And that is a good thing, in my opinion. We do want that to change. We want our country to be more secure and more safe. But there are going to be repercussions for it, and there will be some difficulties before we get to a point where that's all under control. And they will lash out, especially at our smaller communities, because they're vulnerable. There's not as much law enforcement presence in order to deter any type of action or any type of takeovers. And they're willing to do atrocious things. They aren't affected by the rules of engagement. The U.S. military and law enforcement and everything else is still going to have all these rules to abide and all these things to worry about when it comes to dealing with these criminals. They don't care. They will do awful things to anyone who's involved, their families. They'll do awful things to innocent people just to make a point. It will be a very dangerous time. So those are the three things that I am personally preparing for regarding the use of equipment like this. Not because it's just fun or cool or anything like that. There are some inherent risks that we are taking here in this country right this second that are quite possibly going to lead us to violence. And that's not something that I want to have to participate in, but it's also not something that I want thrust upon me without any type of response. So maybe this gives you some reasons to consider, getting some additional training or getting some additional equipment or whatever it might be. But I thought it would be good to share with you all that I don't just come out on the range and dress up like an idiot just to have a good time with myself it's 12 degrees right now and the wind chill probably has me at about 0. It's not something most people just do for fun, right? But for me, because I live where I live, I have to ensure that my stuff works here in this climate. And this is actually a new, I think it's a Midwest Industries 10.5 inch upper that I'm testing out. And it's got to be able to hold up to this. So let me know in the comments below if you think this is a reasonable list of 3 events to be preparing for right now. Because the signs are there and the concerns are there, and I just want all of you to be as safe as possible. And if you need anything else from me, go to magicprepper.com. There's all kinds of stuff there. Discord channel that's free, so you can join it there. And also check out discount codes and promo codes. And if you go there, a lot of the companies I work with are running a lot of Black Friday stuff and everything else too. So that might help you out quite a bit. So just get ready and understand this stuff's not just for a good time. There may be a day where it becomes more necessary. And that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.